Okay, in this first video, I'm going to show you how to use Excel to do a lot of the histograms and the histogram tables, frequency tables from Chapter 2. So this Excel file is on the course page, and you may download it if you want to kind of play around with it and see if you can get this to work as well. All right, I'm going to do everything kind of like by hand. Even though I'm using Excel, I'm not going to use any of the quick features to just build a histogram in Excel, because Excel can kind of build a histogram. If you add the data analysis by watching the data analysis video, you can create a histogram and create your bins real quickly and not have to do all this. So this video is more for how you would actually do it by hand. I'm just using Excel to do the calculations. So I'm going to use Excel as a calculator and as a grapher. I am not going to use any kind of real Excel coding. So the first thing we'll do, obviously, is open up your Excel file. I'm on a Mac, so my headers will look a little different than you all that use a PC, but basically the exact same format. So first thing I want to do is sort my data. So all sort does is takes my data and goes from smallest to largest. So if I click on data, I have a sort function. Mine's over here in the PC. I think it's kind of in the middle, but it still is called sort. So I'm going to highlight columns A and B. Then I click sort, and it is now sorted my height from smallest of 52 inches to the largest of 78. So this is data I've been collecting from my classes. I didn't do it with my online class because it's just challenging when we can't talk about it. On day one, we read this article in the classroom talking about heights and when you were born. So I collect some data for my students, and this is our data file. So we're just going to use this data file to practice some of the functions in section 2. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to build a table. So if we're going to do our table here, I need a class width. Right, class width. I'm going to call it that. And we will do it on, let's do it on height. So we'll do it every 3 inches. Well, I'll put 3 there in inches here. Center, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to center that. Right, class width is the first thing you kind of really need to know. So now going based off what the book has, first I need a lower class boundary. I'll call it LCB for short, but lower class boundary, lower class limit, midpoint, upper class limit, upper class boundary, our frequency, and our relative frequency. Right. To clean this up a little bit, I'm a little picky about my Excel. That's just because I've been doing it for so long. So I like things a certain way. I'm going to wrap that text. And yeah, that's good enough. All right. If you want a refresher, go look at the week 1 announcements under the blog, and it kind of talks about the quick definitions of what these are, as well as in your book on page 42. You can kind of talk about these things. So make sure you've reviewed what these definitions are. I'm going to show you how to do the calculations. All right. So start with your class width. You need to start where you want to go. So since my lowest number is 50, right, and I say the next one's 54, I am going to start with a lower class limit of we'll go with 52, our smallest number. Now our upper class limit is 3 more. This is where, actually you can't see me, but in class I use my fingers because a lot of people want to put 55 here, but 55 is too high. So if you look at your fingers and you do 52, 53, 54, with a class width, this is actually 54. Where your class width, when you can add 3 helps, is when you're going down, right? So if I have 3 inches, I can hit equals. Anytime you put equals into Excel, it turns into a big calculator. So I'm going to take my previous cell of 52, and I am going to add my class width. So I clicked on that box. Now, I don't want my class width to ever change in my function here, so I am going to put dollar signs in. So I put a dollar sign in front of H, a $sign in front of the 1, and now that locks that cell. So no matter where I drag this formula, it will keep going back to there to add 3 to it. And you see now I get 55. If I highlight both of these and I take my plus and I move it to the right, and it goes from my empty plus to a dark. On a PC, it'll go from a fatter plus to a skinny. But basically, put it in the right hand corner, click and hold, and I drag down. And it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Alright, oh, because this one had a number in it first. There we go. I gotta bring this down. There we go. Now it's working. Now I can take it and drag it. And that should work. And everything went up by 3. And then I can do the same thing here. Equals, take this cell, plus my upper class limit, put in my $sign so it locks that cell. Oh, I put that one in the wrong place. Come back here, delete that one. 57, bring him down. So I get at least 2 of them. Now I can do the drag technique. You can see I've gone way farther than I need to. So we stop here at 78. So I will come back up here. And we'll delete all these because I don't need them. Because 78 is the highest, so 81 is going to be my upper class limit. Now, again, I like my things centered. That's just a preference, nothing more than that. To find the midpoint, like we said, is the middle value of the classes. So if I take this row and I equals this number, now I'll put things in parentheses just because I want to add before I divide. So this number plus this number, close the parentheses, divide by 2, I have my midpoint, which now makes sense, right? My lower class limit is 52, my upper class limit is 54, my middle number is 53. Right? If I would have had a different class width, the numbers would all change. Now I can just drag this down, and I have found the midpoint of every function. Now this thing's yelling at me because it doesn't like that it says inconsistent formula because it's looking at the cells next to it. Well, I don't want to use the same formula because midpoint has its own formula. It's the middle. So basically I'm creating my histogram here, right? I got my lower class limit. This would be the lower limit of the bar. I have my upper class limit. This is the upper class limit of the bar. And the midpoint is in the middle. Then we have our boundaries. So the class boundaries are numbers to kind of separate things, right? All these are in wholes, and we can have decimals. So it's like, well, where do decimals go? So that's where class boundaries come into effect. So to find a class boundary, start with the first one. I take my first upper class limit. No, I'm going to put these in parentheses again. Take my first upper class limit. I'm going to add to it my next lower class limit. So you can see by the color of my boxes, I took the first upper and I dropped down to the next lower, and then I divide by 2, and I have it now in decimal. So now when I'm building my histogram, if a number is less than 54.5, it goes into this number. If it's greater than 54.5, it goes into the next row. I drag down, and you can see everything works good. And again, it's all increasing by 3, which is good because that's my class width. Except for at the end. Well, the reason it didn't work in the end is I'm adding this empty box. So for this formula, for the very last one, I will get rid of all of this, and I will just take the previous number and I add the class width just because I have nothing to add to. Because you notice, everything going down always is addition of your class width. Well, if I come back to this cell, I took this lower upper class limit and this lower class limit and added together, right? Well, the value that is here is also the value that is there. So if I hit equals and I say that's my cell I want, because the reason is those are the 2 rows that I combined. So those 2 numbers are the same. It's the break point. It's where you shift to the next row. And I can drag this down, drag him down, and everything's good. Problems I'm missing my first one. Well, just like when we go down, we add our class width, I can do the opposite and subtract my class width. Now I have my boundaries, right? So there are my boundaries. So that is how you build all the tables and the definitions there that are on page 43. Now I can start doing my frequencies, right? So if I click in here my data is sorted, right? Now this is where it's a little tricky doing it by hand. Excel does have a thing, and I'll post a video on how to do that. Mac users, you're not going to be able to do this. You're going to have to do it this way if you have the old Mac like I do. But if you have the new Microsoft Office on your computer, even a Mac user, you can add data analysis. All right. I will show how to do that at the end of the video for Mac users. My PC users, Windows users, go and follow the link that says under YouTube videos that say data analysis in Excel and do what that says, and that's how you can add data analysis. All right, and then I'll post a histogram on how to use video link on how to do histograms using data analysis. But for now, we're doing stuff basically by hand. So in Excel is a count function, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to count, and I know I'm going to count all the numbers from 52 to 54.5, right? Well, there was only 2, because 58 is higher. That's why we sort. So there's 2. That's my frequency there. Then I do my count function again. And now I'm going to go from 55 to 57.5. So let's start 58. And there is only 1. And equals count. So this is very tedious to do it by hand, but this is how you would do it by hand on pen and paper too. I'm going to now go from 58. Oh, so I have none actually in that one. I messed that up because it says 57.5 and I put a 58 in there, right? I did. So there is no count there. So that value is just 0. Now equals count. So our class width maybe have to be a little bit bigger. We'll see. Now I can count my 58s up to my 60.5. So those are those 3. Equals count. And you could just count by hand, but I'm just showing you that Excel will count for you. Now I'm going to go from 61 to 63. Equals count. I'm going to go 64 to 66. So someone gave me a 66.9, so he's going to actually, because of the class boundaries, he's going to jump into the next one. So we'll stop there. Equals count. And now I go from 67 or 66.5 to 69.5. So that's where I'm picking up this guy. And I'm going up to 69.5. Yep. Equals count. Now I'll go from 69.5 to 72 and no. Yes, 72.5. I'll come down here. Where was that? 69. There he is. And I go to 72.5. Equals count. Oops, 0 instead of count. Count. And now I'm going to go from 72.5 to 75.5. You saw there was a 72.5. I put it with the lower because that's right at the breaking point. So I just let him go with the other limit. This 0.55 is going up. And we're going to 75. And equals count. And now I'm going from 75.5 to 78.5. And there is a better Excel code than this, but I don't want to get into too much into Excel coding. So that's these last 2. Then we have no one higher, so hit 0. Now, what you should do is your Excel will have this sum function. It looks like a sum symbol. So if I highlight all my data and I hit the auto sum, I think in the PC it's over here. It says I have 93 data points, right? Well, if I come here, I can just highlight these. And when I stop, you can see right here, it says 93 times 1 columns. 93 rows, so I have 93. So I've included every data point in my frequency. So that's a good way to check that you didn't miss anything. So there is my frequency. Remember, to find relative frequency is a percentage, so I take equals my frequency number, and I'm going to divide it by my relative frequency, my total. So again, my total is not going to change, so I'm going to put dollar signs in because I'm going to do the drag method for my formula. And this is a percentage, so I am going to just go to 3 decimal points because that's what the book recommends. And drag these down. I like to do an auto sum here because if I've done everything correctly, it will always sum to 1, which it did. So there's my totals. These are just checks, not total, of my thing. So again, I'm a little picky with my Excel, so I like to put things in borders. So I'm going to put a border around my table, put a double line border under my titles here. And there is my frequency table from section 2.1. Alright, now in the next section, we're going to learn how to do graphing. So, I'm going to still do this by hand, just so we get an idea how it's all working, and then we can see how Excel can do this quickly for you if you want. Alright, so now I'm going to go to Charts, or you can click on Insert in Charts depending on which version of Excel you're using. And I am going to do a bar chart. Now let's highlight the data effect. I'm going to first do my frequency. I'm going to insert a bar chart. And there is my histogram. Alright? Now this is where I got to kind of manipulate it because I'm building it my way versus Excel's way. I want to change these values on the x-axis, so I'm going to right click on that and hit select data. Alright, so now I can give it a name if I want. So histogram of heights. And then my X values are my upper class limits. Alright, come on, do what I want you to do. There we go. Upper class limits. I don't like gaps. If you do like them, you can have it. It's not right or wrong. Alright, so I'm going to put 0 gap. And I can hit OK. Now, because I gave it a title, I really don't need this out here, so I'll delete that. Oh, it didn't get rid of my gaps, even though I told it to. So another thing you can do, once you click on the bars, you come up here to Format. Now, what's harder on mine than yours, things that are format. Yours will come down in boxes on the PC, and you can click on this little arrow here, which will let you edit it. I have an older version of Excel, so I hit Format Data Series. And it brings up the same box. See right here it says gaps. I'm going to 0. Alright, now I have no gaps. Again, if you click on your format, they'll have ways to format. There'll be a little arrow right here on the PC version. Click on that, and that's how you can get rid of your gaps. Right? If I want to add a line so I can see the breaks in my bars, I just click on the color I want. I can come over here and weight it, make it a little thicker so it's easy to see. See, now you see the bars. Right? So there's how you do a histogram. So looking at this histogram, we want things to be bell-shaped because we want things to be normally distributed, which is this is not too bad. Because to do the calculations we're learning in this course, your data has to be normally distributed. That's the reason you want to build a histogram, so you can see how your data is distributed, right? And so in this case, it is kind of, but I have these outliers over here. So the way you kind of look at how things are skewed is you kind of compare it to your foot. So here's my little pinky toe. And I come out here and here's my big toe, right? So this is like my left foot as I'm looking down at it. So this is left skewed. I have the lower numbers pulling it this way, to the left. If these were swapped and it was over here like a right foot, where this is my big toe and this is my pinky toe, this would be right skewed. So this one is a little left skewed. Alright, so this is how you do a histogram of heights. Now, if you want to do one of a relative frequency, it's the same procedure again. Now you hit Insert. And I go to, wrong one. I just go to Charts. Charts. Now I have to highlight the column. Highlight your data. Then go to your chart. And there is that one of my relative frequency. So again, I don't like the numbers, so I'm going to right click. Select data. And I am going to put my typo. Again, this is now relative frequency. E-N-C-Y, there you go. My x-axis are still my upper class limits. Come on. There we go. Right? And I think I got everything I want, so I click OK. Again, I don't need that title, so I'm going to get rid of it. Again, I don't like the gaps, so I'm just going to right click and format data series, and I'm going to turn my gaps to 0. Again, that's just my preference. I can, like I said, if I want to come back here to format, I can change the fill, right? So if I wanted to read a different color, say green. There's a crazy looking green, so it's a little darker. Yeah. And then I can again put my black line fill. And if you want to have dashed instead of solid, you know, that's a preference that you can kind of play with it. You can give your titles labels, right? Again, PCs are a little easier to use during this because this is made for a PC. This is Microsoft Office, so it's made by Microsoft. So Macs, you got to kind of play around with it for a minute to really get it to do what you want it to do. That's why I do a lot of right clicking, because I can find stuff quicker that way. So here it says Format Axis. And I should be able to label it here. I do not see it in there. This is where it gets a little tricky sometimes. Alright, well, now my computer's thinking. I have an old computer too. I'm doing this from home because it's easy for me to record at home. I don't have to worry about getting permission from the school to do these things. Text box. Alright, fine. There we go. Chart layout. That would help. So then I click on, I want that. There we go. Access titles. And I want the below. So now I can say this is height in inches. And if I want to put this on here, I just click on it and I put vertical title. And I can call it percentage. Now, if I want these actually to be percentages, all I have to do is come back up here, and I can just turn these into percents. And if you want to go one decimal place like we should, then I just click on that. So this is how you can kind of add the different things that you want in using Excel to create your charts. Right. You should always add title, so we'll do it real quick while I go to this plus to give you a refresher again. Access titles. This is still height in inches. And this one is just a frequency. So that's how you create charts by hand. Even though I say by hand, I'm not doing pen and paper. I'm using Excel as basically my paper, but I'm still doing all the manual calculations that are in the book. Now, you could still build your table and then go to data analysis, and you could use your upper class limits as your boundaries, and then as highlight your data, and it'll create the frequency for you. There is a video posted on how to build histograms using data analysis for Mac users. And there's also a video for how to add data analysis to a Windows. For Mac's a little different. So you come here to Insert. Tools. There we go, Tools. And then you come down here to Add-ins. You see I have a solver. If you have a newer version of Microsoft on your computer, you should have solver as well as data analysis. Click the data analysis and it will add it. Again, Windows, you go to the video I posted on how to add data analysis, and I'll show you how to add it to a Windows. I can't create the video because I don't have a Windows machine. But once you get those added, you go to Data, and you can see there's my solver, right? And then right next to wherever solver is, there should be a data analysis. Windows maybe put it over here sometimes, but they'll be right next to each other, right? So mine's too old, I can't add it. But that's how you add those. Another chart we could do is a cumulative distribution function, right? And so how to build a cumulative distribution function is you will start with your first I'm going to do a relative frequency one. So you start with your first frequency. So we can label this. This is our CDF, cumulative distribution function, right? And this equals a probability that x is less than or equal to little x. Some random variable is less than equal to some other, right? I'm just going to cheat. I'm just going to put an underline on it so it says less than or equal to. And I have it laid out in more in the blog announcement. But how to create one? You start with your first frequency. Then the next one is you take the next frequency, in this case is 0, and you add it to the previous. So obviously I'm going to get the same because I have a 0 in here. Well, my computer's thinking again. There we go. Then I take the previous and I add it to the next. And again, you keep that pattern up all the way down. And, oh, remember, because we have 0 at this last end, that's why I double 100, so I can technically stop there. But a CDF will go from your lowest value, and they add them up, and you will always end at 100%. Right? And so that is, and then later on, I'll show you how to do this in chapter 5, where we really use it with probabilities. But the book mentions it here and explains what it is, and then we really use it a lot in chapter 5. But so I just wanted to add it to this video on how to create CDFs. CDF is a cumulative distribution function, so it's cumulatively adding the previous steps. It looks like a step function. All right, and so in this case, it starts at 2.2%, and every step, except for this one because it has a 0, but basically every step it goes up by a little bit, so it looks like stairs when you graph it. All right, but I will do one of those in a future video when we get more into chapter 5. So here is our first set. I am going to save this Excel and I will upload it, and then next week I will open this Excel back up and I will create more videos off this same data set for the rest of chapter 2 and going into chapter 3. All right. Have a good first week, and email me or message me if you need any assistance.